I've been standing in the same kitchen since I was 22, though the place looks nothing like it did back then. Calder's Table was once a dim little corner diner on a busy Seattle street. The kind of place you'd walk past without a second glance. My grandfather, Silas Calder, had opened it in 1974, cooking comfort food for dock workers and office clerks, when he passed it down to my parents. They kept the name, but let the shine fade. By the time I returned from culinary school in New Orleans, the walls needed paint. The menu hadn't changed in a decade, and the regulars were getting fewer every year. I'd earned a degree from Oregon State in marketing before chasing my culinary dream, and I walked back through those doors with a plan. Not just to cook, but to build something worth remembering. I brought in bold flavors soy ginger short ribs that melted under the fork, seared halibut with saffron beurre blanc, and the dish that would become our signature tangerine glazed lobster. I learned to style plates for the camera, posting videos of sizzling poke bowls and caramelizing sugar that turned our dormant Instagram into a feeding frenzy, from 12 followers to 50,000 in 2 years. Our little restaurant became a place people crossed the city to visit. The pinnacle came when the Alderbrook Hospitality Group approached me. They wanted Calder's Table recipes for their West Coast hotels, willing to back it with a $1.8 million investment. I negotiated every detail myself: menu rights, sourcing standards, even the plating. When we signed the deal, I stood in the quiet dining room after closing, hands on the worn wooden bar, imagining my grandfather's smile. People began to call me the face of Calder's Table, though officially I was still just the head chef. I didn't push for the title. The work spoke for itself, and I told myself the family would see that in time. Still, on quiet mornings before the prep rush began, I'd sometimes imagine a place of my own, not to replace Calder's, but to see what I could build without limits. That morning, as I prepped for our annual family meeting, the air in the private dining room felt warm with possibility. I didn't know the future of the restaurant was about to turn in a direction I never saw coming. The private dining room had always felt like a sanctuary: deep wood paneling, shelves of wine bottles, and framed black and white photos of my grandfather in his apron. It was where we celebrated milestones, where decisions were made over plates of food and cups of coffee. That morning, I walked in with my notebook ready, expecting to talk about expansion plans I'd pitched months ago. My father, Kenneth, sat at the head of the table, glasses low on his nose. My mother, Elise, had her usual steady, unreadable expression as she sipped her coffee. Sloan, 3 years younger than me, lounged in her chair, scrolling on her phone like she'd rather be anywhere else. Dad cleared his throat, his signal that something big was coming. "Your mother and I have decided it's time to appoint a CEO for Calder's Table," he began. "We believe Sloan is ready to take the helm." For a moment, the words didn't register. "Sloan," I repeated. She looked up from her phone with a smile that barely reached her eyes. "I've got my MBA. Maris, time to put it to use." Dad went on. "You've done wonders in the kitchen, but Sloan has the business acumen to scale. We're thinking bigger picture, multiple locations, franchise potential." I set my pen down slowly. I doubled our revenue. I secured a $1.8 million investment. I built the brand from the ground up. And you think I can't see the big picture? Sloan leaned forward, flipping through a printout of her strategic vision. "First step is streamlining the menu. Cut the niche items too expensive, too slow to produce. Focus on high-volume sellers: burgers, fried rice, things we can turn quickly." "That's not what we're known for," I said sharply. "Those niche dishes are why Alderbrook invested in us." "Maris," my mother said softly. "This is about growth." "No," I said, heat rising in my chest. "This is about replacing the person who built this place with someone who's never spent a night on the line." Dad raised a hand. "Enough. You'll stay on as head chef under Sloan's direction. It's what's best for the business." The words landed like a slap, and I knew nothing about this meeting was going to be easy to swallow. The first week under Sloan's direction felt like being slowly pushed out of my own kitchen. I'd walk in each morning to find purchase orders altered, premium ingredients slashed in favor of cheaper substitutes. Frozen shrimp replaced the fresh spot prawns we'd been sourcing from the coast for years. Imported saffron gone too costly for the margins. Sloan's note read in red ink across my order sheet. One afternoon, my phone buzzed with a call from Denise Hart, our seafood supplier for nearly a decade. Maris, your sister just called me asking for bulk frozen halibut. Is this some sort of trial run? Her voice was cautious, but I could hear the edge of disbelief. No. Denise, I said, gripping the phone tighter. It's not a trial. Ignore her order. I'll handle it. But handling it meant fighting the same battles every day. Sloan began reviewing my marketing campaigns, questioning why we spent on professional photography or sponsored posts. She didn't understand that a single viral video could fill our tables for weeks. The staff felt the shift, too, mid-service. She'd wander into the kitchen, clipboard in hand, scribbling notes while servers sidestepped her in the narrow space. Once, during a dinner rush, she leaned over the sauté station and told my sous chef to simplify the garnish on our miso cod. The plate went out looking like something from a chain restaurant, and the customer sent it back. By the end of the month, the tension was thick enough to taste. The team spoke in clipped sentences, careful to keep their heads down. They looked to me for answers I didn't have. Then, in a manager's meeting, Sloan flipped open her binder and said casually, I think we should cut the tangerine glazed lobster, the miso cod, and the yuzu scallops. They're too labor-intensive and eat into profits. I stared at her, my pen frozen above my notes. Those weren't just dishes, they were the backbone of our reputation. The reason Alderbrook had written a check with 7 figures on it? I knew then that she wasn't just trimming costs, she was dismantling everything I had built. Piece by piece. The night of the chef's table event was supposed to be a showcase 5 courses, each paired with wines from a boutique vineyard in Oregon. Our most loyal patrons seated around the open kitchen to watch the process. I'd spent weeks designing the menu, refining every plate until it felt like art on porcelain. The tangerine glazed lobster was the centerpiece. The dish that had earned us praise from Alderbrook's investors. Guests had just settled in. The first course being plated, when Sloan appeared at the pass in a tailored blazer and a self-satisfied smile. She tapped her glass with a spoon, drawing every eye in the room. I wanted to share some exciting news about the future of Calder's Table. She began. Starting next month, we'll be streamlining the menu to improve efficiency and profitability. Some of our more elaborate dishes, including tonight's lobster, will be retired to make room for faster, higher volume options. The room went uncomfortably still. My staff glanced at me, wide-eyed, hands hovering over plates. I stepped forward, keeping my voice steady. These dishes are why we're booked solid. They're not just food, they're our identity. Sloan's smile thinned. Our identity needs to be scalable. Before I could answer, my father's voice cut in from the corner, calm but firm. Maris. Adjust. Change is necessary. The words burned more than Sloan's announcement. Adjust, as though my role was to fall in line and watch our reputation unravel. I finished the service in silence, my movements mechanical. The flavors I'd fought for suddenly tasting like someone else's after the last guests left. I didn't go home. Instead, I walked the wet streets to Holly Vance's place, the warm-lit bistro that had been my second home since culinary school. She poured me coffee, set it down, and leaned against the counter. I told her everything: Sloan's cuts, the public humiliation, my father's dismissal. Holly listened, her eyes never leaving mine. When I finally stopped, she asked quietly, "If this wasn't your family's place, would you stay?" The answer came without hesitation. "No." She nodded slowly. "Then why are you still there?" I didn't have an answer, but the question followed me into the night, settling deep in my chest as something that could no longer be ignored. All weekend, Holly's question echoed in my head. If this wasn't my family's place, would I stay by Sunday night? I'd stopped trying to argue with the answer. The only thing left was to decide how I was going to leave. I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, a stack of worn recipe binders beside me. These weren't just lists of ingredients, they were years of trial, error, and refinement. The tangerine glazed lobster, the miso cod, the yuzu scallops. I backed up every file to an external drive, scanning my handwritten notes into PDFs. The restaurant's official copies could stay where they were, but the originals were mine. Then I went through my supplier contacts. Denise Hart's seafood deliveries, the organic farm in Snohomish that sent us fresh herbs every Thursday, the artisanal vinegar maker in Portland. These weren't just vendors, they were relationships I'd cultivated over late-night calls, shared meals, and mutual trust. I exported every email thread, saved phone numbers, and made sure they knew to expect changes. Last was the Alderbrook file. Every meeting note, every version of the contract, every email with Ethan Dre, their representative. Technically, the contract belonged to Calder's table, but the trust that had made it possible belonged to me. Ethan had come to me because he knew my food, my standards, my follow-through. Without that, the numbers on paper didn't mean a thing. By the time the sun rose Monday, my decision felt solid. I dressed simply black blazer, dark jeans, and walked into the restaurant before the first prep cook arrived. My father's office smelled faintly of old paper and roasted coffee. He looked up from his desk. Surprised? "What's this?" he asked as I set a single-page letter in front of him. "My resignation," I said, effective immediately. His brows pulled together. "Don't be ridiculous. You can't just quit. This is your family's business. It stopped being mine when you made Sloan CEO. I said evenly. "I'm not working under someone who doesn't know the first thing about what we do." "You'll regret this," he warned. "You're walking away from your legacy." I met his eyes. My legacy is what I built. I'm taking that with me. I left before he could answer, the envelope still lying unopened on his desk. Outside, the air was sharp and damp, the city waking around me for the first time in years. I wasn't walking toward a kitchen. I was walking away from one. The first few days after I walked out felt like stepping off a moving train. The noise and motion were still there, but I was standing on the platform, watching it all speed past without me. I kept my phone off most of the time, letting messages pile up. I didn't need to hear the panic to know it was coming. By midweek, the stories started trickling in. Ryan, our front-of-house manager, texted that 2 servers had quit after a brutal Friday night where orders were triple-entered and half the tickets went missing. Kristen, one of my best line cooks, emailed to say Sloan had tried to run the kitchen herself for a lunch shift, burned a pan of rice, overcooked the salmon, and sent out plates that came back untouched. The vendors were no better off. Denise Hart called me one morning, her voice half frustrated, half bewildered. "Maris, they're asking for frozen shrimp now. Bulk orders. Is this real? You always insisted on fresh?" "It's real," I said, my stomach turning, but not from me. "Do what you think is right." Yelp reviews started dipping within days. Not the same as it used to be. Signature dishes gone. Fish tasted off. I didn't reply to the reviewers. I wasn't there to fix it anymore, but each line felt like watching a crack spread through something I'd built with my own hands. The calls from my father started on Thursday. I let them go to voicemail. The first was terse. "We need to talk." The second carried more strain. "Suppliers are confused. Call me back. By Friday." His voice was tight, almost pleading. "There's an issue with Alderbrook. Ethan's raising concerns about changes to the menu. This is serious. Maris." That one made me stop. Alderbrook wasn't just a contract, it was the foundation of the restaurant's growth plan. The thing that had shifted us from local gem to regional contender. If Ethan was unhappy, it meant something big was breaking loose. I didn't call back. Not yet. But I felt the pull. The curiosity that comes when you know a storm is about to hit, and you're the one who taught them how to read the weather. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I almost didn't pick up when I saw Ethan Dre's name flash across my screen, but curiosity won out. "Maris," he said without preamble. "I just met with your sister. It was not good." I leaned back in my chair. How bad she couldn't answer basic questions about the signature dishes. When I asked about sourcing, she gave me numbers that didn't match our agreement. Then she pitched replacing the tangerine glazed lobster with burgers. Burgers. "Maris." His voice was sharp, the frustration barely contained. I closed my eyes, picturing the expression he must have worn in that meeting. Ethan didn't rattle easily. If quality changes, the deal's off. He continued, "I'm giving you the courtesy of a warning before we make anything official. We signed this because of your food, your standards. Without that, Alderbrook has no reason to stay." "I'm not there anymore," I said quietly. "You'll have to take it up with the CEO." There was a pause. "That's a shame," he said, and the line went dead. 3 days later, my father called. His voice was raw, stripped of the usual authority. "Maris, it's gone. Alderbrook pulled the investment. Ethan won't even return Sloan's calls. We're in trouble." I kept my tone even. "I told you what would happen. We need you to fix this," he said, urgency in every word. I stared out the window at the rain streaking down the glass. "Ask your CEO," I said, and ended the call. The silence afterward was almost physical, like the air had thickened. I knew the loss of $1.8 million wouldn't just bruise Calder's table, it would leave a wound they might not recover from. And yet, I felt no urge to step back in. If they wanted to save it, they'd have to decide what my worth really was. They chose a small cafe in Fremont, halfway between my apartment and the restaurant. Neutral ground. Though nothing about it felt neutral when I walked in and saw them, my father with his tie loosened, my mother avoiding my eyes, and Sloan with her arms folded like armor. "Thanks for coming." My father started, "We need to talk about bringing you back. Alderbrook's gone, but we can rebuild if we move quickly." I took my seat, set my coffee down. "If you want me back, here are my terms. Equal partnership with Sloan, not head chef under her direction. Equity now, not someday. And public recognition for the contributions I've made." Sloan scoffed. "You're trying to take my job. I'm asking for what I've earned." I said, "I doubled revenue, secured the investment, built the brand. You lost that investment in one meeting." "That's enough," my father said sharply. "We can discuss the details, but Alderbrook is priority one. You have the relationship with Ethan." I held up a hand. "You don't get my relationships without respecting my role. This isn't me bailing you out just to go back to being sidelined." The conversation spiraled into clipped exchanges, Sloan defending her strategy, my father pushing for a quick fix, my mother murmuring about compromise. But as the words volleyed back and forth, I felt something shift, even if they agreed to my terms. I realized I didn't want to go back. Not to the same walls where every decision felt like a battle, not to a family that only saw my worth when the balance sheet bled. "I think," I said finally, my voice steady, "that what I want isn't to return. It's to start fresh." Sloane's eyes narrowed. "You're bluffing." My father leaned forward, frowning. "Maris, be reasonable." But in that moment, the decision felt like the clearest thing I'd ever made. I wasn't here to negotiate a comeback. I was here to walk away for good. Holly didn't hesitate when I told her I was ready to open my own place. Within a week, we were walking through a vacant corner spot in Capitol Hill, a former bakery with high ceilings, exposed brick, and a worn charm that begged for revival. I could already see the kitchen layout in my mind, smell the first night's service. We signed the lease, pooled our savings, and started tearing the place apart. Days blurred into nights choosing tiles, sanding counters, painting walls ourselves when the budget got tight. Every decision was mine to make, and for the first time in years, no one was hovering over my shoulder with a spreadsheet. I called Ethan once the blueprints were set. "If you're still interested," I told him, "I have a new menu you'll want to see." He came by with his tasting team, and by the end of the night, he was signing a $500,000 contract to feature my dishes in 2 Alderbrook hotels. It wasn't $1.8 million, but it was mine built on my terms. The news spread quickly. Denise Hart showed up with her first delivery of fresh seafood, grinning like she'd been waiting for the call. Ryan left Calder's to manage my front of house, and Kristen traded her station there for a spot on my line. It felt like getting my family back, the one I'd chosen. Opening night came with a packed dining room. Plates of tangerine-glazed lobster and yuzu scallops left the pass under my name, my vision intact. I moved through the kitchen with a calm I hadn't felt in years, every sizzle and aroma reminding me why I'd started in the first place, for the first time. The table was mine. Months later, the rhythm of Allison's table. My table felt as natural as breathing. The dining room stayed full most nights, regulars greeting us by name, new faces arriving on the strength of word of mouth. One afternoon, my mother stopped by, hands wrapped around a cup of tea she barely sipped. "I should have spoken up," she said quietly. "I saw what you did for Calder's and let your father's decision stand because I didn't want to fight. I was wrong." Her voice wavered, but she met my eyes. "I'm proud of you." Sloan came a few weeks later, dressed simply, none of her old polish. She lingered by the pass, watching service, before admitting, "I thought I could handle it. I didn't know how much work it really was." "I'm sorry." She didn't ask for forgiveness, only if she could call me now and then for advice. I told her she could. The last to appear was my father. He stood in the doorway one evening after closing, looking smaller somehow. "This place is something else," he said. "I thought Sloan's degree made her the better choice. I didn't see how much you carried. I was wrong. I didn't gloat. I simply invited him in, poured a glass of wine, and we talked not about business, but about my grandfather and the meals that had started it all. That night, in my kitchen, surrounded by a team I trusted, I plated dishes for a table of regulars, knowing I had rewritten my own legacy.